Hello, my amazing students. Today, I have something truly inspiring to share with you. A story that will not only boost your English, but also leave you feeling more motivated than ever before. After listening to this story, you will look at your own problems and realize how small they really are. The strength, courage, and determination you're about to hear about will make you believe that anything is possible if you don't give up. This story is about a woman who faced incredible challenges, but instead of letting them defeat her, she rose above them and achieved greatness. Her name is Helen Keller, and her journey from darkness and silence to becoming a symbol of hope and success will leave you in awe. So, before we begin, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to leave a comment telling me what you learned from this powerful story. I'm sure you'll feel as inspired as I do after hearing about Helen's amazing life. Let's dive in. Helen Keller was born on June 27, 1880, in a small town called Tuscumbia, located in Alabama, USA. She was born in a peaceful house with a loving family. Her parents, Arthur and Kate Keller, were excited to have a new baby girl. They named her Helen Adams Keller. Little did they know that their precious baby was about to face a huge challenge that no one could have ever imagined. When Helen was just 19 months old, she fell terribly ill. No one knew exactly what the illness was, but it was severe, possibly something like scarlet fever or meningitis. This sickness took away Helen's ability to see and hear. Imagine this. At such a young age, she could no longer see her parents' faces or hear their voices. The world suddenly became completely silent and dark for her. For any child, these two senses, sight and hearing, are the most important ways we connect with the world. But for Helen, everything she once knew became a mystery. She couldn't hear people talk. She couldn't see anything around her. Can you even imagine the pain and frustration she must have felt? It's something most of us could never understand. As Helen grew up, she became frustrated. She couldn't express her needs, and her parents didn't know how to help her. It was like she was trapped in a world where no one could understand her. She would often get angry and throw fits. Imagine a little girl who can't talk, who can't hear, who can't see. How do you think she would feel? Helen was confused, sad, and angry all at once. But deep inside, she had an incredible spirit, and this spirit would soon change everything. One of the hardest things about being a child is learning how to communicate, right? For most of us, that comes naturally. We talk. We listen. We see people's faces and understand what they mean. But for Helen, it was all a puzzle, and she had to figure out how to solve it by herself. It was an incredibly difficult journey, but Helen was about to meet someone who would change her life forever. That person was Anne Sullivan, a teacher who came to Helen when she was about 7 years old. Anne was partially blind herself, so she understood what it was like to struggle, but she was determined to help Helen see the world in a new way, even though it was hard. Anne didn't give up on Helen. She was patient, kind, and passionate about teaching. The first day they met, Anne showed Helen how to communicate by spelling words into her hand. It was a slow and difficult process, but Anne never stopped trying. Can you imagine how hard it must have been for Helen? She couldn't see Anne's face, and she couldn't hear her voice. Everything Anne did had to be taught in a way Helen could feel. One of the most famous moments in Helen's life came when Anne took Helen's hand and placed it under running water. At that moment, Anne spelled out "water" in Helen's palm. And suddenly, something amazing happened. Helen understood. She realized that the water was connected to the word Anne had spelled out for her. It was like the world had opened up to her in a way she could finally understand. This moment was the turning point for Helen. From that day on, she was determined to learn everything she could. She was no longer trapped in a silent, dark world. She had found a way to connect with the world around her, and it gave her the strength to keep going. But the journey was not easy. Helen was in a world where most people couldn't imagine how she could live, let alone succeed. Helen's teacher, Anne Sullivan, worked tirelessly with her every day. It was a long process, but Helen was not afraid of hard work. She had something powerful inside of her, a desire to learn and connect with the world no matter how difficult it seemed. Every day, Anne would spell words into Helen's hand, and Helen would feel the objects they were connected to. For example, if Anne spelled the word flower, she would guide Helen's hand to touch a real flower, so that Helen could feel it and understand the word. It wasn't just words that Helen had to learn. She had to learn to read and write. Since she couldn't see, she used a special system called Braille, which is a way of reading and writing with raised dots that Helen could feel with her fingers. Imagine trying to read and write without using your eyes. How difficult do you think that would be? But Helen was determined. She didn't let her blindness stop her. Anne didn't only teach Helen to read and write, she also taught her to speak. Now, speaking without hearing your own voice might sound impossible, but Anne taught Helen how to feel the vibrations in her throat when she made sounds. Over time, Helen was able to speak words and communicate with others. Her speech was difficult to understand at first, but with Anne's patience, Helen's voice became clearer. By the time Helen was 10 years old, she had already learned so much. She was not just a young girl who couldn't see or hear. She was a student, a learner, a person full of knowledge and ideas. But Helen didn't stop there. She dreamed of something bigger. She wanted to go to school, like other children her age. In the year 1894, at the age of 14, Helen went to the Wright Humason School for the Deaf in New York, and she did something that no one expected her to do. She excelled. She worked hard every day, learning more than ever before. After that, Helen was accepted to Radcliffe College, which was a prestigious school for women in the United States. This was an incredible achievement, especially because she was blind and deaf. Helen wasn't just happy to be in college. She was determined to do her best. She worked with a lot of support from Anne, who continued to help Helen with reading and understanding her lessons. The two of them would spend hours together, Anne spelling out every word Helen needed to learn. Even though this was very challenging, Helen never gave up. She graduated from Radcliffe College in 1904, and she became the first person who was blind and deaf to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree. Can you imagine how proud Helen must have been? This was a huge moment, not just for her, but for people everywhere. It showed the world that even the greatest challenges could be overcome with determination. Helen's education didn't stop at books and classes. She was passionate about using her voice to help others. She began giving speeches about her life, sharing her journey of overcoming challenges, and encouraging people who faced their own difficulties to keep going. Through her writing and speaking, Helen became a powerful figure, inspiring thousands of people around the world. She also became an activist, using her fame and influence to fight for the rights of people with disabilities. She was passionate about making the world a better place for people who were often forgotten or ignored. She advocated for better education for the disabled, for better treatment, and for equal rights. Her voice became one of the most important in fighting for the rights of the disabled community. Helen's life was filled with hard work, dedication, and passion. But it was also filled with love. She had a deep friendship with Anne Sullivan, who became more than just a teacher to her. Anne was Helen's lifelong companion and supporter, always by her side, helping her achieve more than anyone could ever have imagined. Helen was also close to her family, and together, they shared moments of joy and pride in her incredible achievements. Through all of this, Helen showed the world that it was possible to overcome any obstacle. Helen Keller's journey did not stop after graduation. In fact, her most influential and impactful work began in the years that followed. After achieving such incredible success in her education, she became determined to use her voice to help others. She wanted to make sure that the world knew that people with disabilities could accomplish anything they set their minds to, just like anyone else. One of the first things Helen did after college was to begin writing. She had so many stories to tell about her life, about her struggles, and about her triumphs. Her first book, The Story of My Life, was published in 1903. This book would go on to inspire people all over the world. It was a detailed account of her early years, her education, and her relationship with her teacher, Anne Sullivan, who was not just a teacher, but a lifelong friend and supporter. In her book, Helen spoke openly about the challenges she faced, her frustrations, her struggles, and the doubts she sometimes had about herself. But more importantly, she shared how she overcame those challenges. She explained how she used her senses, touch, smell, and taste, to experience the world in a way that most people never thought possible. Her book became an inspiration to millions, showing them that no matter how difficult life gets, we always have the ability to adapt and overcome. But Helen wasn't just a writer. She was also a speaker. She traveled all over the world, giving speeches about the importance of education for people with disabilities and the need for greater inclusion in society. She didn't just talk about overcoming challenges. She demonstrated it through her own life. She was living proof that no matter the obstacle, we could push forward and succeed. She used her own voice to tell people that their limitations didn't have to define them. Helen became one of the most famous women in the world. But even though she had gained international fame, she remained humble. She never thought of herself as a superhero or someone special. She always believed that anyone, regardless of their situation, could accomplish great things if they didn't give up. One of Helen's most powerful messages was about the importance of helping others. She was a passionate advocate for the rights of disabled people. She traveled the world, not just giving speeches, but also working with governments and organizations to improve the lives of people who were disabled. She fought for better schools, better jobs, and better living conditions for people with disabilities. She believed that everyone, no matter their circumstances, deserved the opportunity to succeed. But Helen's life wasn't only about work. She also loved to enjoy the simple things in life. Even though she couldn't see or hear, Helen loved to feel the warmth of the sun on her skin, the cool breeze on her face, and the joy of a good conversation with her friends and family. She enjoyed reading books, listening to people talk, and feeling the beauty of nature. Despite the challenges she faced every day, Helen found happiness in the smallest of moments. She taught us that happiness is not about having everything, it's about appreciating what you have. Helen also had a very strong belief in the power of service and giving back to the world. She dedicated much of her life to various causes, including the American Foundation for the Blind, where she worked to improve the lives of blind people. She believed that by helping others, we could make the world a better place. Helen's voice was so strong that she even became involved in politics. She spoke out for the rights of women, the poor, and anyone who faced discrimination. She was a strong supporter of women's suffrage, the right for women to vote, and she was also a member of the Socialist Party. Through her work, she tried to make sure that everyone had the same opportunities to succeed, no matter their race, gender, or disability. Even in her later years, Helen continued to inspire people with her strength and her words. She wrote several more books, including her autobiographies and books on social issues. She met with presidents and leaders from around the world, talking to them about how they could help improve the lives of people with disabilities. Her work was never about herself. It was always about helping others. But like every person, Helen had her challenges. In 1936, her dear friend and teacher, Anne Sullivan, passed away. This was a deeply painful moment in Helen's life. Anne had been not only a teacher, but a soulmate and lifelong companion. Losing Anne was like losing a part of herself. But even though she was heartbroken, Helen didn't give up. She continued her work, knowing that Anne would have wanted her to keep pushing forward. In the years that followed, Helen's health began to decline. She was still active, traveling and speaking, but she knew that her time on Earth was limited. However, Helen was not afraid. She had lived an incredible life, full of challenges, achievements, and victories. As she grew older, she continued to teach others the most important lesson of all: never give up. Helen's mind remained sharp, and she still loved to read, write, and learn. Even in her final years, she kept up with current events and the struggles of people with disabilities. She was always working on new ways to raise awareness about the challenges that blind and deaf people faced and how society could do more to help them. She also continued to advocate for women's rights, social justice, and human equality, values she had fought for her entire life. But the years were not kind to Helen physically. In 1961, Helen Keller suffered a stroke that affected her health significantly. But like always, Helen didn't let that stop her. She continued to inspire others, often receiving letters from people around the world telling her how much her story had impacted their lives. She was a living example of someone who had overcome incredible adversity. Even in her difficult moments, she still chose to shine and help others. As she aged, Helen grew frail, but she never lost her sense of purpose. She continued to work with her longtime companion and assistant, Peter F.K. Oles, who helped her communicate and continue her advocacy work. Even though she could no longer travel as much as she once did, her presence was felt wherever she went. She gave speeches, wrote books, and kept working for social change, making sure that her voice never went silent. In 1968, after an extraordinary life of accomplishments, Helen Keller passed away at the age of 87. Her death marked the end of a life lived with incredible determination, but it also marked the beginning of a legacy that would continue to inspire people for generations to come. Helen Keller's words were not just words, they were lessons for the world. Every single phrase she spoke came from a place of strength, courage, and a deep understanding of life's challenges. Her ability to see the possibilities in the impossible continues to resonate with millions. Let's look at some of her most famous quotes, along with the lessons we can learn from them. 1. Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. This quote reminds us of the power of unity. No matter how strong we are as individuals, we are even stronger when we work together. We should always remember that by supporting each other, we can overcome any obstacle. 2. The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. Helen Keller teaches us that true vision doesn't come from our eyes, but from our heart and mind. Vision is about seeing the bigger picture and knowing where you want to go in life. It's about dreaming big and never giving up, even when circumstances seem difficult. 3. What I am looking for is not out there. It is in me. This powerful message tells us that the strength we need to overcome challenges is already inside us. Sometimes we may look for external solutions to our problems, but we must remember that self-belief, courage, and determination are qualities that live within us. 4. Keep your face to the sunshine and you cannot see a shadow. This is one of Helen's most famous quotes. It teaches us the power of positivity. Even when life feels hard, if we choose to focus on the good, we will find light. It's not about ignoring the darkness, but about choosing to focus on what brings us hope and joy. 5. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. Life, as Helen Keller reminds us, is meant to be lived fully. It's about taking risks, facing fears, and embracing each day as an adventure. If we live cautiously and afraid, we are not truly living. We must be brave and take every opportunity life offers. Helen's legacy and what we can learn from her life. Helen Keller's life wasn't easy. It was filled with struggles and obstacles that most people could never imagine. Yet, despite all of that, she lived a life that changed the world. What made her life extraordinary was not that she was perfect, but that she was resilient, persistent, and unwilling to give up. Helen Keller teaches us many things. Perhaps the most important lesson she gives us is never to give up, no matter the circumstances. She teaches us that challenges and difficulties are a part of life, but they don't have to define us. We are not defined by what happens to us, but by how we choose to respond. Helen's life shows us that anything is possible if we are willing to work hard, stay committed, and keep going, even when things seem impossible. She didn't let being deaf and blind stop her from achieving her dreams. In fact, those very challenges made her more determined to succeed and to inspire others to do the same. To everyone watching this video right now, Helen Keller's story is here to remind you of something incredibly important. Your problems are small compared to the possibilities within you. Whatever challenges you are facing in your life, whether they are